Broadcasting live from the Liberty Express Radio Network, eFactor.com presents School for Startups Radio, where we talk all things small business and entrepreneurship. Now, here's your host, the guy that believes anyone can be an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is not about creativity, risk, or passion. Jim Beach.
Wouldn't it be awesome if there was a social media website where venture capitalists, angel investors, and more importantly, us entrepreneurs could all get together to find money to build our businesses? Todd Crosland of Seed Equity Ventures has done exactly that, and he is our first guest today on School for Startups Radio. And after that, I have Charles Gaudet. He has done an amazing thing in helping make profits predictable. There's nothing worse than the up and downs, trying to chase after money one month and not having it the next. He will be with us also on School for Startups. Welcome to the show. I hope you are having a fantastic day, using today to grow your business, get out there and change your life forever. You know, it's up to you. You're the one that has to take your hand, put it way up over your head and say, me. I am going to do what it takes. You know, to become an accountant, you have to take a test. To become a lawyer, you have to pass a bar. To become an electrician, you have to become part of the union. To become an entrepreneur, you have to get up off the sofa, throw away the remote control, never watch television again, and take your right hand and put it high up in the air and say, me. I am going to do what it takes. I'm not satisfied with my life the way it is. I'm not satisfied being just another one of the people. I am going to be special, and it's only up to me. No one can make me do it. No one can help you. Well, I'll help you a lot, but no one's going to get your tuchus off of the sofa. I can't do that for you. I can't take a crowbar and put it underneath your butt and pump you up. You have to do that. And here at School for Startups Radio, we're going to give you the motivation and the skill sets to do exactly that. Thanks for listening today. I'm excited for the show. I'll be back with Todd Crosland in just a second. Thanks for listening.
My name is Jeff Lovejoy with Action Coach, and Jim asked me to tell you about an offer that I'm excited to extend to this audience. I work with business owners as a trusted advisor in guiding them on strategies to grow their businesses. I'm happy to offer listeners of this radio show 90 minutes of my time at no charge to talk to you about what's holding your business back and to propose strategies that can overcome those obstacles. Call me at 404-250-3221 or send me an email at jefflovejoy@actioncoach.com to schedule a meeting.
School for Startups Radio appreciates you listening. Please check out the 5-star rated School for Startups book on Amazon, which argues that anyone can be an entrepreneur when you learn a new way to think about creativity, risk, and passion. Go to schoolforstartups.com to see our online learning center, and you can connect with the host, Jim Beach, on LinkedIn, send him an email at james.beach@att.net, or follow him on Twitter at Entrepreneur Jim. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back to School for Startups Radio. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope you enjoyed Jesse and my conversation about games. I am incredibly honored and excited now to introduce you to my next guest. His name is Scott Jones, and listen to this resume. At the age of 25, he started a company that enabled the cell phone industry to really operate. He sold it later for $843 million. I don't know if he got every penny of that, but still, damn. Anyway, he then started a company called Cha-Cha, which has done over 1 billion, answered over 1 billion questions to 32 million unique users a month. That company is one of the most important integrated platforms out there. I'm really excited to learn more about it. He is also the entrepreneur in residence at 1150, which we will talk about as well. I am very excited to talk with Scott Jones. Scott, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks, Jim. And I'm honored and excited to be here.
Well, I was wrong about Boston Technologies. It wasn't in the cell industry. It was the one that makes iTunes work. Is that right?
Well, there's a couple of different, actually several companies that I've done. The first one, you're right, was at age 25, and it was in the voicemail business, but you said that it enabled mobile phones, and in part you're right, because remember, back then there were answering machines on desks and kitchen counters, and there were cell phones about the size of bricks back then, and it was going to be pretty difficult to slam one of those answering machines into a brick-sized cell phone. And so putting that voicemail capability in the central office switch really did help enable the mobile cellular industry.
One of the things we talk about on this show is that you don't have to be creative to be an entrepreneur. You can just go copy a business idea and run with it, and that's cool enough for us. Does that offend you, being one of the most innovative guys out there? You've got patents left and right. Does my philosophy that creativity isn't really important offend you, Scott?
Well, I saw that on your site, and at first I think I wanted to be offended, but because I do apply a lot of creativity to what I do. But then I thought about, well, what do I lecture at my entrepreneur classes at MIT and Purdue and IU, and one of the things I always say is the idea is really only 1% of it. And it could be my idea, or it could be somebody else's idea, but 99% of the work is actually executing with excellence. So I think you're right. That it's not so much the creativity that really counts. To be a successful entrepreneur, it's the other 99% of whatever it takes to freaking get the job done.
Well, I say that at the bank, they don't give you any extra 10 points because you came up with a new idea. Your customers don't say, oh, that was really creative. Let me pay you more than what you asked for. So I appreciate that. But on the other hand, Scott, you're one of the most creative, innovative people on earth. What advice can you give us non-innovators to be more like you, to be more creative? How can I learn to be an innovator? Right. Or can I?
I think there are some natural instincts, but really most of it can be learned by just forcing yourself to think outside the box. And so, on my website at scottajones.com, I talk a little bit about this, and I've lectured a fair amount about it, where you can just do little things throughout the day to make your brain go places that it wouldn't normally go. Take a different way to work. Use your left hand when you're eating. Just do things differently. And when you do it, it forces you to take a different perspective. Your body, your mind is not on autopilot. And when you do that, ideas just start to come. And also, I find that if you can sort of get rid of the distractions of life, so it used to be on airplanes, it was my favorite time, and I have so many ideas in my file cabinets that are written on barf bags because I was in an airplane.
I love it.
with no distractions. And these days it's a little harder because now you can do just about anything while you're on the airplane, including phone calls and be connected to the internet. So it's full of distractions. When I did voicemail at in my mid-20s, I was traveling up to Walden Pond, the same one that Henry David Thoreau. Yeah, and it was, I thought it was going to be really quiet and distraction-free, which it mostly was, except there was a train that came through a couple of times a day that was, came right next to the pond and completely disrupted my thinking. And I came to find out that train was there when Henry David Thoreau was there. So he was getting distracted too.
I find I'm not creative on an airplane. I'm just mad on an airplane. I'm creative when I'm mowing the lawn, shaving, taking a shower, driving. What is it about these learned things that we do so repetitively that allow us to become more creative? Do you find that you're a bald, follically challenged man like myself? When you're shaving, is your mind in a different place?
It is. I mean, I think the goal here is to get outside autopilot. So, in your thinking. Now, when you're shaving or showering, maybe the autopilot is good because then you can let your mind roam into other areas. But you kind of have to, say, to yourself, yeah, I'm going to let that happen. and I'm not going to, let distractions, interrupt me. So I find that you have to be, thoughtful about it. You have to be intentional, right? You have to say, I'm going to allow myself to drift into these other areas and let my imagination run wild. And it's okay that 20 of the things that come to mind are stupid and aren't going to go anywhere. But it's that next idea that, hey, there's something to this. And, but even when those come up, I like to, sleep on it maybe 3 days and come back. I write it down right away, because if I don't, I absolutely will forget that fantastic idea. And so I write it down and I come back to it a few days later. And if I still love it, then I'll probably tell a friend or my wife about it and see how they react to it. And if I, get good reactions all around, then I know I'm maybe onto something.
The process that you described there almost sounds like brainstorming. I had a guest who has taken brainstorming apart. He was on about 6 months ago and said that it's a horrible process. Do you like the brainstorm process? Do you like coming up with dumb, bad ideas, acknowledging that they're dumb and saying, but it led to this really great one? What do you think about
right.
that?
That's the way it always happens is, you brainstorm, and it's just, it's wonderful to have a lot of stupid ideas, because you end up putting together 2 or 3 of those stupid ideas, or taking the best parts and qualities of a certain idea and merging it with something else that comes up later. I mean, that process is really fun. And I built a room in my house for exactly that process. It's off on the, depending on how you measure floors, the 5th floor of the house. It's up in what used to be an attic. And I covered it in whiteboard. So the ceiling, the walls, everything's whiteboard. And, there's 50 markers up there. And, I can get away from all distractions, no phones, no people coming through. And I've got this whiteboard that's just a clean slate. And I can make it a clean slate anytime I want. And it's just, great to go up there either by myself, or I'll take, a handful of people up. And, we'll all brainstorm together. And I do what's called green light sessions, where there is no bad idea. You can't laugh at somebody's idea. You can't criticize it. It's a green light. Everything's a good idea. And then after that's over, might be 20 minutes, might be 2 hours later, then we say, okay, well, let's take all of those ideas and let's start crossing some off the list, and let's try to prioritize what are the best things we got up on the whiteboard. And then those are the ones that you work with and that you continue to brainstorm with.
Are you more creative when you're alone, or when you invite some friends up to your very strange room in the attic?
Well, I don't know that I'm more creative in either of those situations. It depends. So I find that, if I had a really good night's sleep and, something triggered me to go down a line of thinking that's rich, that can be a really gratifying time, to think through those ideas by myself, where I don't get interrupted and I can, give it some depth of thought that's really important. On other occasions, if I have a problem to solve, I don't have all the answers, and I love the dynamics that happen when you get the right group of people together, which is usually trying to find people who don't think like I do. They think from a different perspective and through a different lens. And I try to pull together usually a small group, 3, 4, 5, 6. Above 6, then it's just too many ideas, too much. It becomes distracting. And so, it's usually between 3 and 6. That's a great group, assuming they have, come from different places. That's when the really best ideas bubble up. Even when I've come up with something on my own and had my think time on my own, I'd like to then put it into that, cauldron, to really, crystallize, something good.
Is there bad creativity, Scott?
I'm sure there is. It's not coming to mind right now because, my view is, even bad creativity, you can sort of, turn it around and spin it and pull some good things out of it. I tend to try and find the good in everything. So, I suspect there is, but that's not how I think about it.
Right. What is the silliest idea, quote unquote, the societal idea that was laughed at that you made the most money from?
Oh, I thought you were going to leave off the most money from. So I'll tell you that
Do
one.
both.
Which I
Give
think
me both
there
answers.
Yeah, there was an actual version of this because I never actually went and made it. But charcoal filtered underwear, my wife always makes fun of that one. But they did. Somebody made it. I don't know if they were successful with it. Let's see. In terms of idea that actually made money that was sort of a crazy idea. I'm not really thinking of anything because the ones that made money, sort of made sense.
Yeah, but at first people laughed at you. Voicemail, ha 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 ha, silly boy. Nothing like that.
Thinking back, that was a couple of decades ago, but there were a number of people who were saying, "Why would you make me talk to a machine?" Remember, way back when there was a phase of a couple of years when mostly people were just talking on the phone to each other, and then as they got into answering machines and into voicemail, there were plenty of people who said, why are you making me talk to a machine? They took offense at having to talk to that machine. And then there was a transition 2 or 3 years later where people thought, oh, well, I don't have to keep calling you, to hunt you down. I can just leave your message, and now the ball's in your court, and it's, you're the bad guy if you don't, respond to what I've now left at your doorstep. And there was a shift then, but I don't know that they were laughing at me as much as being bothered by the fact that I would make somebody talk to a machine instead of a real person.
You operate out of Indiana. You've made a couple of references, Purdue and such. Has your career been hindered by not going ahead and moving to Silicon Valley? Would you have been even more successful, Scott, if you had taken the plunge? And you were at MIT, obviously a cauldron of everything academic and intellectual. But here in Atlanta, they make fun of us because we're not part of the Valley. Address that, please. Do you think you would have been better off moving to the Valley despite what your wife would have said about it?
I think that there are advantages everywhere. So being in the Valley, obviously, you've got this just amazing critical mass of talent. Anything you might need to hire for a tech company, you can find it. But the downside of that, the double-edged sword is, and you're going to compete with all those other great ideas, to get that talent to come to your baby. And you see the Google and Facebooks and the Twitters and everybody else and all the long list of startups fighting over talent out there. So, it's always a double-edged sword. If you're here in Indiana, if you're in Georgia, my view is, in Indiana, we have, some wonderful universities. We've got Purdue, IU, Rose-Hulman, which is, top undergraduate engineering school. We've got Notre Dame, and a long list of other universities and colleges producing all of these graduates, many of whom then go to the coasts. But the really nice, benefit of all of those institutions is, they're creating talent. So it's fairly easy to start up a tech company here and find the talent that's needed. And Jeff Bezos invested in one of my companies, and one of the things he told me when he made the investment is, "Hey, you're lucky that you're in Indiana because you don't have to compete for the employees. You don't have them all jumping ship to go to some other thing." Because there's less competition, for that talent. And so, I think it's possible to build fantastic companies. One of the best examples was ExactTarget here in Indianapolis. They were bought by Salesforce for $2.5 billion about a year ago, and so it's very possible to create wonderful high growth significant companies here in the Midwest, and I'm sure the same thing is true in Atlanta. I know the same thing is true in Atlanta. Great universities and great companies can come from anywhere.
I know that you can teach someone to be an app developer. Indiana University has one of the top entrepreneurship programs in the world. Is it possible to teach entrepreneurship, or are you born that way? Entrepreneurs born with a missing gene?
I think that there are certainly characteristics of people that make them good entrepreneurs, a willingness to stick to it when others would not, and also, a sense of, when to fold them if necessary and move on to the next thing, fail fast. But having said that, I think you can teach entrepreneurship skills, and I've taught at MIT with my friend Jack Gill courses on entrepreneurship. I've taught at IU and Purdue and IUPUI here in the city. And you can absolutely teach people how to be entrepreneurs and how to be good ones. And many of the people who took these courses, went on to start their own companies and be quite successful. So, I think if you've already got that gleam in your eye, and you've got an idea and you want to run with it and you're passionate about it, but by taking a course on entrepreneurship or just studying on your own on the internet or from a book, you can learn all the things you need in order to be a successful entrepreneur. Here at I just want to talk a minute about our new school at 1150.
Please.
We've got tons of people coming in here wanting to write apps and build websites. But we're one of the first in the country to offer Swift programming, which is Apple's new language for iOS 8. And we're able to take people who have almost no programming experience, in some cases no programming experience. We prefer that they have a little bit of HTML or some language, coming into the class, but we've taken people who have nothing, and in 7 days, 7 very intensive, immersive days, they open their laptop on Saturday morning and they basically don't close it until the next Friday. And they're hammering out code, building what we call $3 billion apps. So, our version of Snapchat, our version of Tinder, our version of Evernote. And each of these students builds their own version and can put it in the store. They can, reskin it, they can add features to it. But by the time they walk out 7 days later, they know how to build apps for the iPhone in the new language that hardly anybody knows yet. And so we're really excited about that. And for those who have taken the class, about half of them are the next day writing their own apps, which has been really exciting to watch. And for those that are interested in continuing to still have training wheels on, we have what we call the App Apprenticeship Program, where we put them in. They become apprentices on projects that we're doing here at 1150, either subcontracting for other companies or building our own apps internally. They can immediately, have the mentorship that continues to grow their skills. They're learning while on the job, and they're getting paid for it. So unlike the classes where tuition is paid, we start paying our apprentices. It's not what you can make in the market when you're ready to jump out of the nest. We'll kick you out of the nest if we think you're ready, and then you're getting fairly significant compensation for the skills you've learned in our program.
Scott, one of my other silly ideas is that passion is not required. I am passionate about the process, the freedom. Just being an entrepreneur, I will buy or sell anything as long as it's moral and mostly legal. Am I crazy? Wrong?
You mean in terms of the passion?
Yeah, I don't care about passion. I'm passionate about woodworking, but I can't make a living as a woodworker. I do things that I like to do, like radio, so that I can go to Disney more frequently, which I am passionate about.
Right. Well, I think it depends. Some people are fortunate in that they can take their passion and also make money from it. But
yes.
I think you're right that you should not expect that you're going to make money from your passion always. So I would say that my answer to that is it depends. So, I'm passionate about, developing, tech. So I've gone out and done that in a whole bunch of different places. So telecom, my voicemail thing, Grace Note, we supply even now for iTunes, there's 500 million lookups of Grace Note data for music discovery and recognition that's happening today, and that's in the music industry. And then I went off and built robots, ones that drove 6,000-pound vehicles at 90 miles an hour through the Mojave Desert.
And robots to cut grass. I love it. So innovative.
That's right. Right. Residential lawnmowers. And Galaxia, I'm not sure if you heard about that one, where Christmas tree lights, you string them up on your tree or put them on a fence or, trees outside. And the way it works is it automatically maps all of the lights in real time, and you can actually send family photos or even a family video that's swirling around the Christmas tree. That got into the lighting industry. Cha-Cha is a search company. 1150 is a school. So, for me, I get passionate about, all of these different areas. I don't know that any one of them is my single passion. So I do think that whatever you're going to end up, pouring yourself into, you have to have enough energy and passion behind it to stick with it, long enough for it to be successful, right? So, but your example of Disney or woodworking, may not pay the bills. That's true as well.
Right. Scott, I could talk to you for another 65 hours. You are an amazing guy with some amazing accomplishments. I love your views and thoughts on everything. Thank you so very, very much for honoring us today.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it, and look forward to talking again sometime.
I would love to have you back, Scott. And we will be back with the final seconds of the show in just a second.
School for Startups Radio hopes that you will reach out to us if you need help with your business at any stage from concept to exit. Our online learning center at schoolforstartups.com has 80 hours of videos to help with every topic. Jim accepts all connections on LinkedIn, he tweets from @EntrepreneurJim, and he responds to emails to james.beach@att.net. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
You're invited to join over 1 million entrepreneurs worldwide on eFactor. As the world's largest network for entrepreneurs, we provide our members with the right resources and connections to launch and grow their business. Sign up now for your free membership or make the most out of our network and become a VIP today. eFactor.com, the entrepreneur's wingman.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you again so much for being with us here at School for Startups Radio. All we want to do is make you rich, give you the motivation to get started and some of the skill sets that you will need along the way. I am very excited to introduce you to our next guest because he's really going to help with that skill set stuff. And in particular, he's going to help us make our profits more predictable. I hate it when you make $100 million one month and zero the next month. It's so hard to operate when you have that kind of swing. Anyway, Charles Gaudet is the CEO of a company called Predictable Profits, and they do exactly that. They teach us how to, normalize our revenue. Charlie started off at the young age of 4 when he was selling his artwork to his neighbors. After that, he set up some sort of scheme where he charged his parents to use their own toothbrushes. He's been in little publications like Fox Business, Inc., Forbes, Business Insider. He has spoken all over the world, and American Genius Beat named him one of the top 50 influencers. I love this, is a 3-time wrestling state champion. My son's trying to get just one of those under his belt, so I know how incredibly hard it can be. And he has also done some investing in other people's companies. Charlie, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, Jim.
So you really put a nail in the coffin to my whole belief that anyone can be an entrepreneur. You were born an entrepreneur genetically, I guess, starting at the age of 4. Was your daddy an entrepreneur? How did this come about? How at the age of 4 did you start pawning off your beautiful, I'm sure, artwork on your neighbors?
Well, I guess Freud would have a field day on me because my dad. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My dad, he'd come home and he would say one of two things. Either one, kid, if you ever want to make anything of yourself, you got to own your own business. Or the other thing he would say is, kid, employees suck. Don't ever be an employee. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the second part because I do believe that together we're better, and without the team around me, I wouldn't have achieved the levels of success that I have. That being said, as a young, impressionable kid who wants their acceptance and the love of their dad, my dad worked so hard every waking hour of his day, I thought maybe if I started my own business that I'd show my dad that I was listening. And sure enough, he was obviously really proud of me and whatnot. I'm sure he would have been proud of me no matter what. But yeah, so that's why I got started in my first business at 4. And I hate to say it, though I am very proud of my kids. I have a 4 and a 7-year-old. Both of those kids also have their own business.
Excellent. I love it. It's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Charlie, we had a joke at one of my businesses. Boy, this would be an awesome business if we didn't have employees or customers to deal with. And your dad, I think, may have agreed on some of his more frustrating days. So it's interesting. I love seeing a family doing this and teaching others to take control of their own destiny. Is that a part of it? Is it that you like to control your own destiny? Do you just not play well with others? Why are you inherently an entrepreneur? Chip on the shoulder, something to prove? That doesn't sound like it. Just trying to make daddy happy? Is it that simple?
I think it's that competitive nature in me. When somebody tells me that something's impossible, then it just drives me further to make it possible. It's just, I love taking the road that most people don't take, and where most people think entrepreneurship is risky and scary. That's exactly where I want to be. So call me crazy, but it just kind of fits my personality, I guess.
All right. Let's change topics a little bit. Tell me about your book, The Predictable Profits Playbook, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Dominating Any Market and Staying on Top. I'm on a little website called Amazon right now, and the Kindle version is selling pretty well today. It's got some amazing reviews, and it's got 5 stars. Tell me about this book and how to let's transition into helping our listeners. How can we make the profits the same every month? I hate it, as I joked before, 100 million one month, 0 the next.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, being an entrepreneur since I was 4 and growing up every year, having my own business and going to college and again, not taking that conventional route of getting a job and going right in to start my own business, I went through a lot of the same struggles and stresses and fears that every entrepreneur has. There's been several times throughout my life where I was within hours from being homeless. And, so what ended up happening was I became obsessed with this idea of how to become successful. I'm looking at myself. I'm working every working hour of every day. I was brought up with this idea that, if the secret to success is to work hard. I took that literally. I was setting my alarm clock for 3:30 in the morning so I wouldn't, quote unquote, oversleep. And I was working from early morning till as late as I possibly could. And yet I was still stuck hitting that glass ceiling. So, as I accumulated the resources, I invested just over $500,000 traveling the world, studying some of the most brilliant billionaires and centimillionaire entrepreneurs, trying to find out what was the difference that made them successful versus everybody else that I knew that was working hard, that was banging their heads against the desk, still trying to make money, and they were stuck at that six-figure mark. And lo and behold, there is actually a formula. There is something that all these companies tend to have in place, whether they started in their garage or they got some venture capital. There's a formula that they use to break to that level and dominate their market. And so I started taking notes, and I mentioned earlier in the call that my kids appear to be taking that entrepreneurial route. They've got their own businesses, and what I wanted to do was document all my findings. If God forbid I ever get hit in the head, I wanted to at least leave my kids with a legacy. And so I created the Predictable Profits Playbook. And the playbook really illustrates my findings, my $500,000 findings, and the differences between the guy who's struggling at the mall trying to make six figures a year selling shoes, and then you look at Tony Hsieh with Zappos, who created a multi-billion-dollar company walking into a highly saturated market. You look at the thousands of personal development coaches. Many of them are really stuck making just 5 figures a year. They're lucky if they get into 6 figures. And then you look at Tony Robbins, whose company is worth hundreds of millions. And I was fortunate enough to spend a year and a half traveling the world with Tony. And, it was just fascinating seeing the differences between how these people operated. So that's really what I put in the book there.
I sat next to Tony Robbins and his wife at the Star Wars world premiere of Star Wars 1, Phantom Menace. And so that's my claim to fame in my Tony Robbins story. I got to know the formula now, though. Charlie, you say there's a formula. Please share.
Absolutely. So it goes into 3 major components and then subcomponents. The 3 major components are positioning, promotion, and product. It's done a little bit differently than you may have heard in business school with positioning. So if I have permission to be a little long-winded here,
go.
What I'll do is in 2009, 2010, there was a major shift in the way that consumers did business. Before 2009, 2010, excuse me, companies had all the power. You put out a marketing message as a company, you put out an advertisement. Generally speaking, people were not accustomed to jumping on the internet, doing a bunch of resources. Social media wasn't as active as it is now. There wasn't as many review sites, et cetera, et cetera. So companies had all the power. Then around that 2009, 2010 time frame, consumers then had all the power. And so consumers got accustomed to jumping on their smartphones and looking on the internet and researching the company that they're potentially doing business with, researching all their competitors, and also researching all the alternatives that are also available. And so positioning has become critically important because you need to position yourself as that obvious choice. There are many different strategies and techniques that you can use, but the most important one is making sure you're removing price from the equation so they're not buying from you based on price, because then you're just commoditizing yourself. And commoditization is really the cancer of all business. It's more so today than any other point in history. But you want to position yourself as that obvious choice. You want to create that unique advantage. So you're competing in what's called a market of one. And I stole that phrase from Dan Kennedy, but it's true. You want to compete in what's called a market of one. And then you're building your authority and your expert status. That's another reason why I created that book, is because it helps to increase my expert status and my authority. If you think of the most influential people in the world, dead or alive, that have influenced many people's lives, 2 things they have in common: they're speakers and they've written a book. So there's a reason for that. The second part is product. What my sort of mantra is you want to find a way to become the most expensive competitor in your niche and yet still dominate the market. And there are many ways in which you become the most expensive competitor and dominate your market. We look at Zappos, for example. I mentioned Zappos earlier in the conversation. Here's a company in a highly commoditized, highly saturated industry doing over $1 billion a year, and they don't compete on price. They are not the cheapest shoe provider in the world, yet they're doing over $1 billion. And there's a reason for it. It's because they removed price as a primary buying decision, and people are buying for other reasons. Inside of that product is something what's called a growth factor. These are companies that get up in the morning, that plant their feet on the ground, and the first thoughts in their head is, what else can I do to provide my customers or my clients a greater advantage, a greater benefit, a greater value, to get them closer to that ultimate result? I think it was Henry Ford that said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. But entrepreneurs today, they have to look beyond just asking their customers what they want. They have to think about what is the ultimate result that they want. And then they have to build their business around trying to create that greater advantage for that ultimate result. And then it spins a little bit more into the offer and filling a need and whatnot. But then we move over to promotion. See, when you think about promotion, most of my coaching clients and my consulting clients, when I meet with them, what we find out is that most small businesses only have one or two, if they're lucky, 3 ways of generating income. We call this the spokes on a money wheel. If you think of a wheel and spokes in the wheel, most small businesses have 1 to 2 spokes on a wheel. If any one of those spokes break, you get a real bumpy ride. So part of creating predictable profits is creating multiple spokes in the wheel, multiple different strategies. The more strategies you have, the more income-producing strategies that you have, the smoother the ride. There are front-end strategies, which is all about bringing the leads in. Then once you have the leads in, that's actually when your job actually begins, not when it ends. Your customers are your highest source of profits, are your highest source of revenue, or your easiest to sell. Now's your time to maximize and optimize that relationship and grow it beyond that. So that's all around promotion, how to create these multiple pillars and what the pillars are and your different options. Now, if I can spin it just a little bit down the road, what a lot of people say to me is, oh my gosh, how do you create these multiple pillars? You know, how can you do so many things all at the same time? And this is where you really have to think strategically. And it's about first you dominate one pillar. So you take one spoke, one source of income, and you really do really well and you optimize it. You figure out what your ROI is. And once you do that, then you put it into automated and systematized processes. In technology today, you can do this very easy, very quickly, so that you set something almost on autopilot. I mean, I say almost on autopilot. Most of our strategies are completely on autopilot. And then once you have a strategy on autopilot, then you can go ahead and you can build another one and build another one and build another one. And then you build these metrics and these dashboards in front of you so you can tell if everything's operating the way that it should. And look, I know it sounds complicated and I know it sounds like a lot of hard work, but you know what the truth is? So many people and so many entrepreneurs today are sitting behind their desks trying to find out how they can work less. But the most strategic competitors, the most strategic entrepreneurs on the planet, they're sitting around their boardrooms, they're sitting around with their team, and they're trying to find out, there's somebody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to find out how they can steal your competitors, how they can grab more market share away from you. They're not trying to sit and figure out, what can I do to work less? They're trying to figure out what can they do to work more strategically. Now, when you put the systems in place and you build a team around you, inevitably that frees up your time and allows you to live the dream of that entrepreneurial life. But it's not about going out there to think about working less. It's about thinking about becoming more strategic.
Let me ask you this, Charles. Do you still work your butt off and work really hard all day, most days?
Yeah, I do. I do,
let me follow up. Let me follow up. The whole autopilot thing made me think of Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week. I just don't buy it. I'm pretty successful. I've done really well, but maybe I don't want to get to the 4-hour work week because I'd be bored out of my mind, but I just don't buy it. And it seems to me, I just want to get your take on this. If everything does become systematized and is on autopilot, that is possible to get really close to the 4-hour work week. Thoughts, please.
Well, if you were to ask somebody like Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos, he would say that, in fact, I wish I could find this interview somewhere. He said that if I remember it was him in this interview again, so he said something along the lines of, I would give my competitor my business plan because I know it would take them 10 years to catch up to where I'm at right now. And by the time they caught up, I'd already be 10 years in front of them. So even though I may create an automated and a systematized plan, there's always more ways to become more strategic. There's never a time where you're just going to sit back on your laurels. We'll take a system that's absolutely doing tremendous, and then we'll find ways to make it even better. Because the people that follow me and the people that read the Predictable Profits Playbook and whatnot, these aren't the same people that are looking for a 4-hour work week. These are the people that want to absolutely dominate their market. And so if you want to dominate your market, then, Jim, you're right. The 4-hour work week is not for you. I just don't see how you're going to compete with somebody who's got a team around them trying to strategize how they're going to take more business away from you if you're sitting there on the beaches drinking martinis for 4 hours a week.
Mai Tais.
I mean,
I'm a Mai Tai man.
Tais, yeah. But you follow what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would be bored out of my mind, and I just don't think it's good advice. Inherently, I just don't like the advice. So, and I kind of suspect you would agree with me deep down. Would your kids have become entrepreneurs if you didn't force it on them, Charles? How much of that happened? I mean,
I never forced my kids.
Bull S. I can't say the other word because I'll have to bleep it. I think that somehow, some way, you told them the story of you starting your business and they heard that and they understood that's what was expected of them. No?
Well, see, I designed my life around being able to see my kids grow up. So I have a home office.
Me too.
And I put desks in my office specifically for my kids.
Oh, interesting.
And so I didn't force it on them, but I'm not going to lie to you. I definitely encouraged it. They have their own business cards. They have their own stationery. They have their own pens. And that's the extent that I went. And every little kid, within reason, I guess I shouldn't say every, likes to look at their parents as heroes to some extent. And my kids saw what I did every day, and they had the resources and their desks here, so they just started following. And then when they said, Dad, I think I want to start a business, when they saw how excited I was and was willing to help them, it just sort of went in their way. And so that's, I help them as I can. I high-five them as often as I can, and I do firmly believe in entrepreneurship. I have no shame in promoting entrepreneurship, nor do I have any shame for really promoting, my love for money. And, it is what it is. So
I love money too, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It allows silly little things like lights and heat and stuff like that. So what is the difference between being a junior and being a second? The reason I ask is I have a son who is the fifth. I was not the fourth. And so I'm fascinated by this, and I know no one else in the world cares, but you know what? I don't care what they care. It's my show, damn it. Why are you the second and not a junior?
Well, I tell you, my birth certificate says that I'm technically a junior. My parents always liked the second better, but where it really paid off is I lived in Australia for a while, and I've traveled overseas, and when people saw the second, they assumed that I had some sort of lineage tied to royalty, and I really like that.
I totally agree. I'm so proud that my son is the fifth. I had an elder brother who died, and he was the fourth. And so by my rules, I can name my son the fifth. Do you agree with me? And do you think that a fifth, his name is William Roseboro Beach the fifth, does that sound regal enough to impress you, Charlie?
Hey, I'm impressed. I'm definitely impressed.
All right. In the last minute, I want you to give my other son, Christian William Beach, the first, some wrestling advice. He is borderline number 2, number 3 in the state in his weight class. What do you want me to pass on to him as a 3-time state champion, please, Charles?
Well, I'll tell you that the same strategy that I used to become a 3-time state champion is the same strategy I've used to be successful in business. I was going up against guys. I started wrestling my freshman year in high school. I was going up against people who have been wrestling all their life. But what I did is I decided I was going to work harder than all of them. So when I started wrestling my freshman year, I wrestled all year round, and I never stopped. And now I'm in high school, and I realize if I want to be better, then I've got to play with people that are actually better than me. I got to wrestle people that are better than me. So I'm a high school guy knocking on the college doors, asking them, can I just wrestle with you guys? And so even though I'm in high school, I'm wrestling with the college teams because I knew they would help me become better. And then I went to seek out the number 1 wrestler in the world, which was Dan Gable, out in Iowa.
Sure, I've heard of him.
I flew out to Iowa, and I wrestled with him. So it's really about committing yourself to that vision, committing yourself to being the best, seeking out the best people that you can to play with, to wrestle with, and then going from there.
And then, did you ever wrestle Tony Robbins? Of course, that's a silly question. He's huge. He would destroy all of us. Charlie, I love everything you've had to say. Thank you so much for being with us today. Great information, and I hope you will come back soon and share some more.
That sounds fantastic. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. We'll be right back with the final seconds of the show in just a second.
Hi, I'm Steve Strauss, USA Today columnist and author of the Small Business Bible. You know, I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs who want some help with their business. What do you do? How do you grow it? I've got the answer for you. Come visit our new site, theselfemployed.com. Everything you need to take your business to the next level. Learn about startups, e-commerce, technology. We have podcasts, we have articles, anything you need. We'll see you at theselfemployed.com.
If you are enjoying the show and would like to learn more about Jim's philosophy of low-risk entrepreneurship, please check out the School for Startups book on Amazon. Over 50 reviews have given the book 5 stars. It argues that anyone can be an entrepreneur when you learn a new way to think about creativity, risk, and passion. Full of stories of low-risk entrepreneurs, School for Startups is a great read.
I want to thank Todd and Charles for being with me today. Love what both of them are doing. Just great stuff. They're both making a huge impact and a difference in the world, especially for us entrepreneurs. And so I appreciate that so very, very much. On the show tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit more gaming. The guy who wrote The Sims 2, one of the best-selling games of all time, Ash Monif, will be with us. And then a guy that sold his company to a $25 billion enterprise. It was called iExplore, the #1 adventure website out there. He's got a new thing he's doing called Red Rocket, where he gives out entrepreneurial advice. You're not going to want to miss George Deeb on tomorrow's show. Thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we'll be back tomorrow with more great School for Startups radio. Bye now.